That day, the nightmare I thought I had left behind returned with cruel precision. At San Diego Sunshine Preschool, where I was the principal, a child fell ill after breakfast. Rumors of food poisoning spread like wildfire through the hallways. Yet I sat in my office, phone in hand, scrolling calmly as if nothing had happened. To anyone watching, I might have seemed indifferent, maybe even heartless, but I knew better. I was not cold. I was simply prepared. I had lived this very day before in another life, and the memory of how it had once destroyed me burned hotter than any present fear. In my previous life, when the same incident unfolded, I had panicked. I had tried to explain, to clarify, to protect both my school and myself. But I had barely drawn breath before my husband, Benjamin Scott, stepped forward with an air of false sincerity. He told the parents that it was my fault that I had cut corners and purchased spoiled vegetables to save money. His words condemned me without trial. One of the parents, Heather Turner, who was stepmother to little Ryan Lopez, clawed at my face in front of everyone until blood poured down my cheeks. The image of her rage, her eyes wild with fury, still haunted me when I closed my eyes at night. She went further still, dragging the lifeless body of Ryan to the preschool gates, screaming for me to atone with my life. The fury spread beyond our gates. I was crushed beneath lawsuits demanding millions in compensation, and before I could fight back, strangers, who had read twisted stories online, found me. They did not want justice. They wanted vengeance. They waited for me in a narrow street one night and drove their cars into me until I was nothing but a broken body on the asphalt. That was how my life had ended the first time. Only after death did I learn the truth that Benjamin and Heather had conspired together, their affair long hidden, their betrayal meticulously plotted. They had crafted the entire nightmare as a trap to ruin me and free themselves to start anew with what was mine. Now, given a second chance, I refused to play their game. This time, the moment the familiar whispers of food poisoning surfaced, I stayed composed. I wanted to see how Benjamin would perform his little act without the element of surprise. I wanted to watch him twist to see what lies he would tell when I no longer stumbled blindly into his trap. Principal Carter Madison Young burst into my office, breathless, her face pale with worry. "Something's wrong. Ryan Lopez from pre-K class 2 just threw up right after breakfast. We can't reach his parents. I've sent him with another teacher to Rady Children's Hospital." For a second, a phantom pain rippled through me, the remembered agony of the car crash that had ended my last life. But Madison's urgent voice pulled me back into the present. Before I could answer, Benjamin rose from his chair with exaggerated concern. His brow furrowed as though he carried the weight of every child in the school on his shoulders. "Why did he vomit?" he demanded. "Could it be the food?" His hand brushed my shoulder in a mockingly tender gesture. "Don't worry, Julia. I'll go and check." His tone was soothing, his expression drenched in sympathy, yet my heart thudded with bitter laughter. The same mask, the same performance as before. I had once believed in that gentleness, not anymore. In my previous life, events had unfolded in identical fashion. Madison had rushed in with the alarming news. I had panicked, unable to leave because district inspectors were visiting, and Benjamin had nobly volunteered to go to the hospital. At the time, I thought him reliable, a true partner in the school we had built together over 10 years. The preschool was my dream born from my own savings and endless sacrifices, and he had shared in it. I trusted him, so I let him take charge. That trust had been the rope around my neck. By dismissal time that day, and my past life chaos had exploded. Heather Turner stormed through the preschool gates like a mad woman, shoving me so hard I nearly fell to the ground. Her shrill accusations rang through the courtyard as other parents gathered in horror. "You heartless woman," she screamed, her voice breaking. "My stepson ate your rotten food and now he's in the hospital. And here you are laughing with the children as if nothing happened. Do you even have a conscience?" My blood turned cold. Benjamin had assured me earlier that Ryan only had a minor cold, that his parents had been reached, and that nothing was serious. Yet here was Heather spitting venom, her words igniting the crowd. I turned instinctively to Benjamin, desperate for him to correct her to calm the storm. But he stood silently at the edge, his eyes icy, his lips pressed into a thin line. He had no intention of defending me. I forced myself to address Heather, my voice trembling, yet still composed. "Mrs. Turner, please calm down. All the food we serve is fresh and carefully inspected. There must be some misunderstanding." But my words only fueled her rage. She lunged, nails slashing across my face, and I felt the sting of blood. "Demon," she howled. "If anything happens to him, you'll pay with your life." Ignoring the pain, I rushed to Rady Children's Hospital, my heart hammering with dread. Yet when I arrived, I saw Ryan running happily in the children's play area. No trace of illness beyond a bit of fatigue. I turned on Heather, demanding answers, but she crossed her arms and replied coolly, "He's fine for now. But who knows what damage your food might have caused inside him. If something happens later, it will still be your fault." I swallowed my fury, paid for the medical check, and promised to investigate thoroughly. I even drove her and Ryan home afterward, hoping to reassure them. But the next morning, Heather was back at the preschool gates, her hair disheveled, her face streaked with tears. This time, she was not alone. In her arms, she carried Ryan's body, limp and lifeless. She dropped to her knees, wailing so loudly it pierced through the laughter of the children inside. "Your school killed him," she screamed, her voice hoarse. "Julia Carter murdered my boy." The courtyard froze. Parents gasped. Children clung to their mothers, and my staff stared in horror. My nightmare had returned scene by scene, but I clenched my fists and steadied my breath. This time, I was not the same Julia Carter. This time, I would not let their lies bury me alive. Benjamin Scott rushed forward, then his voice trembling with manufactured grief as he pointed directly at me. "Julia, how many times have I warned you? Stop trying to cut costs by buying rotten produce for the children. You never listened, and now a child is dead." His words sliced through the air, each one landing like a dagger in my chest. The image of Heather Turner collapsing to her knees beside Ryan's limp body traveled fast, captured on phones, and broadcast online before I had even caught my breath. Within hours, the scandal consumed the internet. Headlines branded me a monster, the devil, who had fed poisoned food to innocent children. Strangers who had never stepped foot in my preschool cursed my name, their rage spilling into my inbox. My home, the very air I breathed. Heather filed a lawsuit against me demanding $2 million in damages, and parents who once entrusted me with their children's laughter now pulled them away in horror, transferring them to other schools, as if my very presence tainted them. I remember staggering home after one of the endless interrogations, drained and hollow only to be recognized on the street by people who had read the twisted stories. They did not hesitate. A car lunged from the shadows of a narrow alley, its headlights glaring like judgment itself, and crushed me beneath its weight. The pain of that night, the sound of bones snapping, the world spinning into silence, it still lived inside me even now. That phantom pain seared through me as I sat in my office once more, watching Benjamin play the part of grieving husband, watching Heather howl like a grieving mother. My stomach churned with disgust, but I refused to flinch. If Benjamin wanted to run to the hospital or make speeches of false sorrow, let him. I turned away from him deliberately, leaned back in my chair, and lifted my phone with practiced calm. He could perform for the crowd. I would not give him the satisfaction of my panic. Moments later, Madison Young rushed in again, her voice strained with urgency. "Principal Carter Ryan's stepmother is back. She's destroying property in the lobby, shouting that her stepson is in the hospital again after eating breakfast here. Parents are gathering. You need to come." By dismissal time, the courtyard was seething. Parents clustered together, their anxious whispers twisting into a storm. Heather stood in the center of it all, her eyes gleaming the moment she saw me. She lunged forward like a predator, but this time my security team was ready. They caught her inches from me, restraining her as she clawed at the air. Her shrieks carried across the playground. "Everyone look. Where's the justice for my boy?" He ate their so-called vegetable omelet and wound up vomiting again at the hospital. What kind of principal ignores child suffering and tries to cover it up? She's evil, pure evil. A murmur rippled through the crowd. One hesitant parent raised their hand. I checked the cameras this morning. I did see Ryan take a bite of the omelet before he vomited. I thought maybe he was just weak, but maybe the food really was bad. Fear spread quickly, infecting the others. Parents bent down to question their children, to examine their faces, their stomachs, their hands, as though danger might reveal itself in a single glance. Heather's lips curved into a triumphant smirk, her rage transforming into smug satisfaction. She had found an opening. But I kept my head bowed, eyes fixed on my phone. I let the silence stretch until her voice cracked with fury. Look at her. She doesn't even care. She thinks staring at her phone will save her. Take it from her. Make her answer. The parents shifted uneasily, their voices rising in a chorus of fear and accusation. Explain yourself, Principal Carter. What about our children? What if they get sick too? You owe us answers. Their bodies pressed closer, the circle tightening as if they would not allow me to leave without surrender. Only then did I raise my head, my gaze sweeping the crowd until it landed on Benjamin, who stood on the edge, detached, cold. His expression one of calculated neutrality. Just as before he pretended the chaos had nothing to do with him. My pulse hammered, but I turned to face Heather directly. Her eyes burned with hatred, her body straining against the guards, but my voice was calm. Mrs. Turner, every child's body reacts differently. If the food were truly tainted, then why is it only Ryan who suffers? Do you think I would risk everything on the very day we are expecting inspectors? I would never bring harm to my own school. As for my phone, I was not ignoring you. I was pulling up the kitchen footage from this morning. This is the video of every ingredient we prepared and every step my staff followed. The produce was fresh. The eggs were fresh. There was nothing spoiled. See for yourself. I held the phone out to the nearest parent, who snatched it with trembling hands. Others crowded around, their faces tight with suspicion. The video showed the kitchen in crisp detail, the washing of vegetables, the cracking of eggs, the cooking on spotless stoves. Murmurs spread through the group as they watched, their certainty wavered by the undeniable clarity of the evidence. Heather's triumphant mask slipped. Her eyes darted to Benjamin, a flash of panic crossing her face. She needed him to intervene to salvage her unraveling performance. Slowly, Benjamin moved, his footsteps deliberate, his expression grim. He stepped into the circle, reached for my phone, and without a word smashed it against the ground. The screen shattered into fragments at our feet. Gasps filled the courtyard. My staff froze in shock. Parents recoiled, startled by the sudden violence, but I exhaled a long, steady breath. The phone was gone, but the data it contained had already been secured. I had expected this. I had prepared for this. And in that moment, as Benjamin's mask cracked and his anger flared for the first time, I knew the tides were finally beginning to turn in my favor. Benjamin's face twisted with fury, stripped of the tender mask he had worn only hours earlier. His voice thundered across the courtyard. Stop pretending, Julia. As both your husband and the vice principal, I can't stand by anymore. You've complained to me countless times about how enrollment is dropping, how we're losing money, and you insisted on cutting the budget. You forced the staff to buy rotten vegetables and cheap frozen meat from the street markets to feed the children. That video you showed means nothing. You only staged it because inspectors were coming today, but still a child got sick. For the sake of their health, I have to expose the truth. He sounded righteous, a man of principle, protecting the children and their parents. And the crowd believed him. Parents gasped, their voices rising in a swell of outrage. She's been buying spoiled food all along. Then maybe our children have been affected too. She must be sued. This cannot be ignored. Others shouted, their words cutting through the air like stones. Do you even have a conscience? If something happens to my child, I'll make sure you never know peace. Their anger closed in on me like a tightening noose. I stepped back slowly, trying to maintain distance as security struggled to push through. but there were too many, a dozen parents surrounding me, their fear transforming into violence. Heather Turner, newly released from the guards, lunged forward with a scream, her palm cracking against my face once, then again. The sting seared across my cheek as she shrieked, "You dared to hurt my boy. I'll kill you, you worthless woman." Other parents surged forward, pulling and shoving, their hands gripping my arms, my clothes. From the corner of my eye, I saw Heather glance at Benjamin, the two of them sharing a fleeting look of satisfaction. Their smiles were quick, secret, brimming with triumph. They thought they had me cornered. But their celebration ended abruptly when a deep male voice cut through the chaos. "What's happening here? Who called the police?" The crowd spun around, stunned into silence. Two uniformed officers stood behind them, their expressions sharp, their presence slicing the frenzy in half. "You came at the right time," one parent cried. "We want to report her. This woman gave our children rotten food." "Yes," another shouted. "She has to be punished. A child has already been hospitalized. If anything happens to mine, she belongs in prison." The accusations came fast and loud, spilling over each other in a wave of condemnation. Parents pointed at me, voices hoarse with panic and fury. Only Heather and Benjamin stood still, their faces pale with shock. They had not expected this. In the last life, the police had arrived too late, long after the lies had sunk their claws into me. But this time, I had taken control. The officer raised his brow and asked evenly, "Who called us?" The courtyard fell silent. Parents glanced at each other, confused. Benjamin's eyes flicked to mine, a trace of unease showing for the first time. I straightened my spine and answered clearly, "I did." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I faced the officers with steady calm. "To prevent slander and violence from destroying me again, I called you the moment I left my office. This parent has vandalized school property, fabricated lies, spread defamation, and physically attacked me in front of dozens of witnesses. Her actions have caused significant harm to both my reputation and the safety of the school." Before I could finish, Heather's face flushed scarlet. She lunged again, her voice shrill. "You liar! I'll rip your mouth apart." One of the officers moved swiftly, intercepting her before she could reach me. His tone was firm, cutting. "If you continue with violence in public, we'll have no choice but to take you into custody." Heather froze her chest, heaving her hands, shaking with restrained rage. Yet her voice only grew louder. "Officers, don't be fooled. She's trying to turn everything around. My boy ate breakfast here and ended up poisoned in the hospital. Am I wrong to demand justice?" She didn't care. She sat there glued to her phone while my child suffered. Every parent here saw it. A murmur of agreement ran through the crowd. One mother raised her hand. "That's true. She didn't look at us. She was scrolling on her phone while we begged for answers." Their eyes burned into me, a mixture of suspicion and anger waiting for my collapse. But I met their gazes, my pulse steady, because this time I had prepared for this exact moment. From within the crowd, another parent spoke up, her voice sharp. "That's right, she didn't care about us at all. She just sat there tapping on her phone." I stepped forward toward the angriest parent and asked gently for her phone. Holding it firmly, I lifted my gaze to the officers and the restless crowd. "I wasn't ignoring you. I was investigating the truth." With that, I pulled up the surveillance footage from the preschool kitchen and handed it to the police officer. The video played in front of dozens of anxious eyes. It showed the children of Class 2 eating breakfast. I zoomed in on Ryan Lopez. On the screen, everyone could see the exact moment he bit into a piece of the omelet. He hadn't even finished chewing before he suddenly vomited. The other children ate normally. The officer leaned in, his eyes narrowing his years of experience, allowing him to recognize the critical detail instantly. He turned to me with a calm but professional tone. "Did you send the child's vomit sample to the hospital for testing?" "Yes," I answered firmly. In my past life, distracted by visiting officials and blinded by my trust in Benjamin, I had left such matters to him and to Heather, and that fatal mistake had cost me everything. But not this time. The moment Benjamin had rushed out of the office pretending to be concerned, I had already called Madison Young and told her to take both Ryan's sample and the untouched portion of his breakfast to Rady Children's Hospital for testing. Now all that was left was to wait for the results. At my words, Heather's expression faltered and Benjamin's mask cracked. Heather collapsed to the ground, wailing loudly. "Where is justice for me? My boy is still in the hospital bed and the school dares to deny responsibility. If anything happens to him, you will all pay with your lives." Benjamin stepped closer to me, then his voice softer, almost coaxing. "Julia, escalating this will only hurt the preschool. Just apologize. Say a few gentle words and it will all pass." His meaning was clear. He wanted me to confess to a crime I did not commit. I turned to him with eyes as cold as strangers, my silence sharper than any answer. For the first time he looked unsettled, glancing away as if my gaze burned. And then, like a miracle, a small trembling voice pierced the tension. "Mommy!" Heather's body jolted violently. Benjamin turned his head so fast it seemed to snap his face, frozen in horror. Every parent, every child, every staff member turned to see Madison Young walking calmly through the gates, holding the tiny hand of Ryan Lopez alive. Breathing healthy, Heather shot up from the ground and ran to him, clutching him desperately. "Ryan, why are you here? Who let you out of the hospital?" The little boy shrank back. His wide eyes filled with fear. He clung to Madison's skirt, refusing to speak. Madison placed a steady hand on his shoulder and faced Heather with quiet composure. The doctors cleared him. "He's perfectly fine and ready to go home. I tried to reach you, but you never answered. I couldn't leave him alone, so I signed the discharge papers." The color drained from Benjamin's face. His lips trembled as he turned toward Madison. You stayed at the hospital the entire time." In my previous life, he had managed to send Madison away under some excuse, leaving Heather free to manipulate the situation. But this time, I had called Madison, constantly keeping her updated, reminding her never to leave Ryan alone, and making sure she requested every possible test from food analysis to full medical evaluation. Madison walked toward me and handed me a stack of hospital reports. I took them with steady hands and turned back to the crowd. Heather tried to drag Ryan away, but Madison blocked her firmly. Rage twisted Heather's face. "Does this preschool even follow the law? How dare you discharge him without parental consent? You're hiding something. Did you force him to lie? Ryan, come here. Tell them who your real mother is." The little boy hesitated, torn his tiny steps, faltering. I gently knelt and lifted the reports high so all could see. There's no need for him to speak. The truth is written here. The first report confirmed Ryan had experienced food poisoning symptoms that morning. Heather's face brightened instantly, her voice triumphant as she turned to the parents. "See, didn't I tell you he was poisoned by the food here?" But as I opened the second report, her smile shattered. The second report told a very different story. It showed that the preschool breakfast was perfectly safe. The physicians had discovered the true culprit in Ryan's vomit sample, a spoiled orange. The degree of digestion indicated it had been eaten that very morning. I lifted my eyes and fixed them on Heather Turner. My voice was cold and sharp. "You fed a small child a rotten orange." Her face drained of color. In a burst of panic, she lunged at me, clawing for the papers, but I pulled back before she could reach them. "These reports are evidence," I said, my tone unyielding, "and they will be handed directly to the police." The third report was even more damning. It documented Ryan's overall health, showing that he was a strong, healthy boy, with no underlying stomach condition, no chronic illness, nothing at all to support the story Heather had woven so carefully. The lies unraveled at last. When I finished speaking, Heather and Benjamin exchanged a look of barely contained fear. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't imagined that medical proof would crush their carefully laid trap. In my past life, I had never known the truth about what had truly happened to Ryan, how death had stolen him so suddenly. But in this life, I had ensured that no such tragedy would ever repeat itself. I faced Heather with unflinching calm. "Stop your fabrications. Stop slandering my school. Apologize now, or the law will speak for me. There was no compromise left in me. I would not bend. The parents reading the reports themselves began to murmur in disapproval, not at me, but at Heather. What kind of mother gives her child spoiled fruit, one muttered. Look at her clothes, her jewelry. She doesn't need money. She just wanted to squeeze compensation out of the school. Is she even his real mother? Another asked incredulously. Their judgment rained down on her, and I delivered the final blow with a quiet, bitter smile. She isn't. I explained what Madison Young had told me at the hospital. Ryan's father, Carlos Lopez, traveled constantly for work. His first wife had divorced him, unable to endure the lonely life he led. Later, Carlos had remarried Heather. Most of the time, Ryan's grandmother had cared for him. Only in the last 2 days, when the grandmother had returned to her hometown, had Ryan been left alone with Heather. During that time, Madison had overheard Ryan whisper that Heather had hit him, that he was terrified of her. The color drained further from Heather's face as the parents turned on her with open disgust. She tried weakly to protest, her voice trembling. No, I would never give him bad fruit. He must have eaten it without my noticing. The officer stepped forward, then his expression hard. Enough. You'll come with us to the station and explain yourself there. Without hesitation, the officers flanked her and began leading her away. Heather shrieked, kicking, crying out about justice, about betrayal, but her voice was drowned in the heavy silence of the parents. They stepped back, clearing the way, their faces twisted in contempt. In moments, she was shoved into the back of the police car, her fury muffled by closing doors. As the crowd dispersed, the adrenaline drained from me. Only then did I notice Benjamin was gone. He had slipped away during the chaos, vanishing like smoke before fire. My hands trembled violently, my legs heavy as stone. Staggering back to my office, I collapsed into the chair and let the tears fall. I had survived. This time I had turned the tide. I had changed the ending. A knock at the door pulled me from my daze. Madison Young entered quietly, her face lined with concern. She hesitated, then said softly, "Principal Carter, I contacted Ryan's father. Mr. Lopez said he won't be back until tomorrow. He asked if we could care for Ryan tonight." I wiped my tears, nodded, and whispered, "I'll take him home." But Madison lingered, her eyes troubled. "There's something else. I don't know if I should say it." She gathered her courage and spoke. "At the hospital, when Mr. Scott arrived, he told me to go home, that he'd handle everything. I left, but I remembered your instructions to never leave Ryan alone, so I went back. When I returned, Benjamin was gone. Ryan was by himself." Her voice trembled with frustration. "Principal Carter, forgive me for saying this, but isn't that irresponsibility too great for a vice principal? What if something had happened? Who would have taken responsibility?" I closed my eyes, my chest tightening. Madison thought I might defend him because he was my husband, but she didn't know the truth. She didn't know that Benjamin had already betrayed me far beyond negligence. And this time, I had no intention of covering for him. What Madison did not know was that Benjamin had already destroyed every ounce of trust I once had in him. At this point, I had no desire to shield him. On the contrary, I wanted both him and Heather Turner to pay for what they had done. When I brought Ryan Lopez home with me that night, I was startled to find Benjamin already there. He had set the table with some of my favorite dishes, even placed a brand new phone on the counter, as if peace could be purchased. The brief flash of surprise in his eyes when he saw Ryan at my side quickly vanished, replaced by that familiar warm smile he wore so convincingly. "You brought him home," he said lightly. I cut him off coldly. "Heather will be spending the night in a holding cell, and Ryan's father won't be back until tomorrow." His expression flickered, a shadow of wounded tenderness crossing his face as he looked at me with gentle eyes. "Julia, you're angry with me, aren't you? I only acted out of fear that the scandal would destroy the preschool. You know the school is everything to you, everything you've worked for. I only wanted to protect it. Throwing your phone down was just an act, part of the show, so the parents would think I was on their side." I stared at him, stunned by how easily he twisted his lies into noble sacrifice. Only yesterday he had prepared warm water for me to soak my feet, murmured that I needed to take care of my health. And today he had stood before a mob of furious parents and accused me of poisoning children. The whiplash of his betrayal ripped open old wounds I had buried. Memories I had long tried to forget came flooding back. Just half a year into our marriage, he had suggested we drive back to his hometown to honor his ancestors. We never made it. A highway accident stole the life growing inside me. The doctors said I would never bear children again. I fell into a pit of depression so deep I thought I would never climb out. Until the day I wandered past a preschool hearing, children laugh and seeing their bright faces. In their joy, I found a spark of life again. I returned home and told Benjamin I wanted to start my own preschool. To my surprise, he had supported me wholeheartedly. I emptied my savings, mortgaged the house my parents had left me, ran myself ragged, meeting officials, contractors, suppliers. I bled every ounce of energy into creating San Diego Sunshine Preschool. And when it finally opened its doors stable and thriving, he told me he didn't want me to carry the burden alone. He quit his job to help me. I had thought we were building a future together, but now I saw the truth. He wasn't standing beside me, he was slowly dismantling everything I had worked for. When I bathed Ryan before bed, I noticed a dark bruise along his back. My heart clenched. He was only 3 years old, too young to even understand the cruelty he had endured. He looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes and whispered, "Miss Julia, when will my daddy come pick me up?" I snapped a picture of the bruise with my old phone, tucking it away for evidence. Then I cradled him in my arms, rocking him gently until he drifted into sleep. The image of his small body, covered by a white sheet in my past life, flashed before me and I shuddered. I would never let that nightmare happen again. The next morning, I helped Ryan get ready and walked him out into the kitchen. Benjamin was already there, the table neatly set with breakfast. His smile was the same warm one he had worn for years. "Good morning," he said easily. "Come sit, have something to eat." When I remained silent, he picked up the new phone from the counter and held it out to me. "Here, I forgot to give this to you last night. Consider it my apology. Don't be mad anymore. I know you've already forgiven me, haven't you?" I stared at him coldly, wondering how he could be so deluded. He chuckled softly, as if reading my silence as hidden tenderness. "You didn't hand me or Heather over to the police. That means you understand, don't you? You know I was only trying to protect the school." A bitter laugh rose in my throat. He had no idea. The only reason I hadn't destroyed him yet was because I wanted the rope to stretch further to catch them both in the full web of their schemes. I wanted their downfall complete, undeniable. When I refused to take the phone, he gently pressed it into my hand, his smile unwavering. "It's fine. Don't be angry anymore. Eat your breakfast. Afterwards, we can head to the preschool together." His eyes flicked to Ryan, his voice slipping into something more careful. "So, what do you plan to do about his stepmother? After all, she's still a parent. You can't really take her to court, can you? And Ryan probably wants to see his stepmother," Benjamin said carefully, his gaze flicking toward the little boy. Ryan shrank behind me, shaking his head silently. I pulled his small jacket over his shoulders and turned back to Benjamin with ice in my voice. "Don't worry, Ryan and I will eat breakfast at the preschool. As for you, you're suspended from duty, effective immediately." For a split second, Benjamin froze, disbelief written all over his face. Then anger surged. "You're still angry, Julia? Don't go too far. There's so much work at the preschool waiting for me to handle." I met his fury with calm. "Madison told me everything. You left Ryan alone at the hospital and disappeared. That was gross negligence, Benjamin. I won't cover for you. I'll announce your suspension to the entire staff today." His face paled, his voice stumbling. "No, that's not what happened. I heard Heather was causing trouble at the school, so I rushed back to help." I kept my expression serious, though. Inside, I was laughing bitterly. "Speaking of Heather, since you have time on your hands now, why don't you go to the police station with my attorney? You can handle it." His face lit up instantly, hope springing back into his eyes. So you're willing to reconcile, Julia? Thank you, don't worry, I'll take care of everything. I glanced down at Ryan and then back at Benjamin, my tone flat. You're right about one thing. She is still his stepmother. It wouldn't look good if this blew up too much. Benjamin nodded eagerly, all false sincerity. Leave it to me. I'll settle this perfectly, I promise. I watched him rush out, his figure vanishing with desperate energy, and the corners of my mouth lifted in a cold smile. I wanted to see exactly how he planned to handle it. Hours later, near dismissal time, a message came from my attorney. The case was resolved. Attached were 2 photographs that stole the air from my lungs. In the first, Benjamin had Heather pinned against a car door, their lips locked in a desperate kiss. In the second, his arm was wrapped around her waist as they entered a hotel, laughing together like lovers who had long forgotten restraint. I saved the photos quietly, no emotion breaking across my face. Then after a long pause, I sent them to Carlos Lopez. I stayed at the preschool until late into the night. While I reviewed reports, my phone buzzed. A message from Benjamin. Wife, when will you come home? Nausea twisted in my stomach. I typed a quick reply. Busy, don't wait up. His response came swiftly. All right, love. Please take care of yourself. Don't overwork. The words made my hands tremble with rage. The sweet facade, the endless concern. The performance of a devoted husband, I wanted to tear it apart. But it wasn't time yet. At midnight, when I was sure he was asleep, I checked the hidden surveillance cameras I had installed at home. The feed showed him out cold. Only then did I drive back. He slept deeply, utterly unaware as I slipped into the bedroom. Quietly, I picked up the jacket he had discarded, sliding my hand into the inside pocket. My fingers closed around the tiny device I had planted weeks before, a wireless recorder disguised as a button. It was time. Back at the preschool, I connected it to my computer, my heart pounding as I scrolled through the recordings. His voice filled the room, Benjamin speaking hurriedly with his lawyer, demanding that Heather face no consequences. His tone fierce as he insisted on dropping the case. Another recording him at the station, raising his voice, presenting himself as my representative, pressuring my attorney to abandon the charges. And then the most damning, Benjamin in his car with Heather, his voice low and mocking. She's just a useless old woman, nothing but trouble. All she does is get in the way. Heather's giggle followed, sultry and cruel. Finally, the sounds of a hotel room, muffled laughter, whispered words. Heather's voice sharp with anger. You told me she trusted you completely. How did she know to call the police to keep Madison at the hospital, to order the tests? You ruined everything. We almost had $2 million in our hands, and now it's gone. Benjamin's tone was soothing, oily. She was different this time, yes. But don't worry, as long as Ryan stays in the preschool, we'll get another chance. Heather's voice turned soft, almost pleading. You're not lying to me, are you? You'll divorce her, right? He answered without hesitation. Of course. She can't even give me a child. My mother's been urging me to leave her for years, but if I divorce now, I won't get much. When we sell the preschool and claim the compensation, then we'll leave. She thinks I care about those children. Truth is, they bore me to death. Trust me, we still have time. The recording ended in the sound of Heather's breathless moans sickening in their intimacy. I ripped the headphones off, bile rising in my throat as I ran to the bathroom to vomit. But you know, Benjamin's voice lowered in the recording, if I divorce her now, I won't get much. Once the preschool is sold and we get the compensation money, then we'll leave. She thinks this school is her life, but I abandoned it long ago. Watching those kids run around every day makes me sick. Trust me, we still have our chance. Heather's laugh was sharp. You're terrible. He chuckled darkly. Am I worse, or is your husband worse? Don't even mention that useless man, she purred. You're far better than he'll ever be. The recording dissolved into silence. Then the unmistakable rhythm of breathless sounds filled the air. I ripped the headphones off, bile rising, and stumbled to the restroom where I emptied my stomach. My hands shook as I wiped my mouth, hatred burning through me like acid. I blocked Benjamin's number and left the house that had once been our home. The next morning, when my attorney delivered the divorce papers to him, Benjamin stormed into the preschool like a madman, shoving past teachers and slamming open my office door. "Julia, have you lost your mind? On what grounds do you think you can divorce me?" he shouted. I said nothing at first. Instead, I laid the photos across the desk, one by one. His figure tangled with Heather's, their lips pressed together, their bodies entwined outside a hotel. For a moment, Benjamin froze, his face blanching. Then rage overtook him. "You had me followed. You invaded my privacy. Just for this, you think you can throw me out with nothing?" I lifted my eyes to his. "Sign the divorce papers now, Benjamin. It's your best option." His fury erupted. He hurled the papers across the room. "You want me to walk away empty-handed? Don't dream of it. The preschool, the house, at least half of it is mine." At last his true face surfaced, stripped of every mask. I leaned back, my voice cold. "Dream on. The house is my separate property, not marital. You have 2 days to move out. I've already listed it with a broker." Security. 2 guards stepped in at once, firm hands guiding him toward the door. His face twisted red with fury, spitting as he struggled. "Julia, you'll regret this. I won't let you live in peace." Later, my lawyer informed me that Benjamin refused to sign the settlement. He planned to drag the case into court, confident and smirking. My attorney worried he was plotting something. I wasn't concerned. I had already sent the recordings, the photos, every shred of evidence. My turn would come. Not long after, Heather struck again. This time she caused chaos in the parents' chat group. "Why is this preschool serving chili peppers to children?" she wrote, tagging Madison. Madison responded promptly and professionally. "Ms. Turner, every menu is planned by our nutritionist and sent to the group a day in advance. There are no peppers on the menu. We never serve spicy food to children." "My child says he saw red pieces," Heather insisted. "That's chili. You're lying." Patiently, Madison uploaded a photo of lunch beef noodles in tomato sauce. "This is the only red dish today. It's tomato, not chili. Please check again." Ryan ate happily at lunch. Heather wasn't satisfied. "My son said so. Are you calling him a liar?" The group fell silent. Some parents privately rolled their eyes. Others stayed quiet to avoid conflict. One parent finally spoke. "That's tomato. My child ate it too. If it had been chili, she would have spat it out immediately. She hates spicy food." But Heather's accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud. I stepped in calmly. "It's all right. Perhaps Ryan was mistaken. We'll clarify with him tomorrow. No need to argue tonight." Then, in a private message to Madison, I assured her not to engage further. The next day passed quietly. When dismissal came, it wasn't Heather who showed up, but Ryan's grandmother. Heather was nowhere in sight. That only deepened my suspicion. She wasn't the type to vanish without reason, and I was right. She was only waiting for her stage. On the day of the parents' activity at the preschool, when the hall was full and the children had just finished their performances, Heather made her move. As parents stepped up to the stage to receive certificates with their children, Heather snatched the microphone from Madison's hands. Her voice cracked like thunder. "I want to make an accusation. This woman, Julia Carter, pretends to be a saintly principal, but she abuses my child." The room erupted in gasps. Murmurs rose like a tide as eyes turned toward me. When the final segment of the parent-child activities ended and families were invited on stage to celebrate with their children, Heather Turner seized her moment. She ripped the microphone from Madison Young's hands, and in front of the entire auditorium, her voice rang out sharp and venomous. "I have an accusation to make. This so-called saintly principal, Julia Carter, is nothing but a fraud. She abuses my child." The hall erupted into murmurs, parents whispering behind raised hands, their eyes darting between Heather and me. I only smiled faintly, my heart steady. So this was the day they had chosen, the perfect stage, when every parent was present. I had been expecting it. One parent who had witnessed Heather's chaos before couldn't hold back. "What are you talking about? Principal Carter has never mistreated your child. Be specific." Heather wasted no time. She yanked Ryan Lopez onto the stage, pulled up his shirt, and pointed to the large bruise on his back. "Here, this is the evidence. 2 days ago, my son said the preschool served him chili peppers. When I questioned it in the parent group, they called him a liar. Yesterday, while bathing him, I discovered this bruise. Now tell me, Principal Carter, how do you explain this?" The room fell quiet. The buzz of whispers gave way to watchful silence. All eyes bore into me, waiting for my answer. My chest tightened at the sight of the bruise, but I forced myself to remain calm. With a signal to security, Heather was restrained while Madison swiftly escorted Ryan away from the spotlight. I had anticipated Benjamin and Heather wouldn't stop easily, but I hadn't expected they would stoop this low. What disappointed me most was Carlos Lopez. I had warned him to keep his son away from Heather, yet Ryan had still been left alone with her. Heather thrashed against the guards, her voice shrill. "Don't think you can cover it up like last time. This is child abuse. It's criminal, and I'll see you in court." Her madness only fueled my composure. Yesterday I was occupied preparing for today's activities. I never once saw Ryan. If anyone doubts me, the surveillance footage will prove it. Parents began to murmur again, their voices laced with suspicion. "This woman has problems," one said. "She made a scene before, even ended up at the police station. And now again, poor child." "But what about the bruise?" another countered. "It's clear someone pinched him hard. Maybe she did it herself. Last time she even fed him rotten fruit." A father turned to me, his expression grave. "Principal Carter, this involves a child. You should call the police." Heather's face strained of confidence. Panic flickered in her eyes as she realized fewer parents were siding with her than she expected. Desperate, she clutched the microphone and screamed, "I have a witness!" Her husband. He saw everything with his own eyes. From the crowd, Benjamin Scott stepped forward. He climbed onto the stage, standing tall at Heather's side. His eyes were icy as he looked at me. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with false conviction. "I can testify. Julia brought Ryan to our house. I saw her abuse him with my own eyes. I couldn't stand it, so I asked for a divorce. She threatened me, said if I left, she'd ruin me and take everything. This school carries my effort too, but she is a cruel, heartless woman." The murmurs swelled into a roar, shock and doubt rippling through the hall. I didn't flinch. Instead, I let out a cold laugh, pulled out my phone, and with a few taps sent files into the parent group chat. Notifications buzzed across the room as parents checked their screens. The first video showed me carrying Ryan into my home. He laughed, played, and later fell asleep peacefully in my arms. There was no sign of abuse, no trace of cruelty, only warmth. Then came the photos. Intimate images of Benjamin and Heather pressed against each other in the parking lot, kissing hungrily before slipping into a hotel together. Gasps echoed like thunder. Disgust swept across the faces of the parents as realization dawned. "So that's what this was," one mother hissed. "The two of them have been scheming all along. No wonder she keeps causing trouble," another muttered. "Shameless pair. Trying to slander our principal while sneaking around behind everyone's back." Heather's lips trembled, her hand gripping the microphone so tightly, her knuckles whitened. This isn't real. It's fake. She must have edited it. None of this is true, but the tide had already turned. The parents' eyes brimmed with contempt as they looked at Heather and Benjamin, and for the first time the power they thought they had over me began to crumble. Heather Turner's face turned pale as she clutched her phone, her hands trembling. "This isn't real," she shrieked, her voice breaking with desperation. "She faked it. She hired someone to edit those videos." I let out a cold laugh, my voice slicing through the chaos like a blade. "Heather, did you forget? After that, Benjamin personally escorted you back to my home. If you'd like, I could show everyone even more damning footage." "Enough!" Julia Benjamin roared. His face twisted with fury, his pretense of calm long gone. "You hate me because you discovered I exposed your cruelty toward the children and your embezzlement of school funds. You set this all up to destroy me, didn't you? You want me to walk away with nothing, dreamer." On his tirade was cut short as uniformed officers strode onto the stage. Without hesitation, they pulled out handcuffs, the metallic click echoing across the stunned auditorium. Benjamin Scott, Heather Turner. One officer announced coldly, "You are under arrest. You are suspected of embezzlement, conspiracy to defame, and child abuse. We have gathered sufficient evidence. By law, you are both in custody." The color drained from Benjamin's face as the cuffs snapped around his wrists. He struggled, shouting wildly, "It wasn't me, it was Julia. She orchestrated everything." His eyes darted toward me, filled with hatred and disbelief. He had no idea that from the very moment I returned to this life, I had begun preparing his downfall. What he never knew was that the day he first walked out of my office with that calculated urgency, I had already installed hidden cameras at our home and started digging through every financial record he'd ever handled. Over the years, he had siphoned off school funds bit by bit, exploiting both his position and my trust. I had sent every shred of evidence to the authorities. The sentence awaiting him would not be short. It would be a fitting punishment for years of deceit. I looked him straight in the eye and delivered the only words he deserved. "Benjamin, you reap what you sow." Heather too shrieked in hysteria as the officers restrained her. "No, it's not me, it's her. She abused my child. You're arresting the wrong person." Before her lies could spread further, a man pushed through the crowd with fire in his eyes. It was Carlos Lopez Ryan's father. His fury erupted as he hurled his briefcase at Heather, the impact sending her staggering backward before he kicked her to the ground. "You monster," he roared, his voice trembling with rage. "You dared to lay a hand on my son. Officers, I have proof. Yesterday, while my mother was away, this woman beat Ryan. The footage from my home camera caught everything. I want her prosecuted." Relief washed over me at the sight of Carlos. He had finally seen the truth. From the moment I discovered the bruise on Ryan's back, I had photographed it and sent the images to him, warning him to be cautious. At first, he refused to believe it, insisting Heather treated his son well. But doubt gnawed at him, and he had secretly installed cameras in his home. The proof was undeniable. When I later forwarded him the photos of Heather and Benjamin locked in their embrace, he had quietly contacted a lawyer preparing for divorce and gathering evidence. His business trips had delayed his return, but now he was here, standing on the stage, shattering Heather's facade once and for all. The officers wasted no time escorting Benjamin and Heather out of the building as the crowd of parents parted in silence. Their once proud faces were now masks of panic and disgrace, their futures reduced to years behind bars. Benjamin made one final plea from the back of the police car, begging me through clenched teeth to write a letter of forgiveness to reduce his sentence. I agreed on one condition, that he sign the divorce papers without contest. When his signature finally stained the page, I severed every last tie. There would be no forgiveness. Evil must face its consequences. Months later, San Diego Sunshine Preschool was once again honored as one of the city's most outstanding schools. Standing in the playground, I watched the children laughing, running their voices, filling the air with innocence and joy. For the first time in years, the sky above seemed brighter, clearer, as though the storm that had hung over my life had finally passed. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain this time: everything would only get better. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.